For those of you who do not know, and I think everyone does, but I shall go ahead and we will introduce again. I am Charles Brandon, the Duke of Suffolk.
I am Father Paul. I am Mad Owen Fisher, able-bodied sailor of the Sea Hawk.
I'm Father Oh no, I'm Vladimir Fairfield, Captain 60 on Baron of Sussex.
I am actually Father Paul, village beekeeper. Good morning.
Today we're going to talk about the history of the town in which you are sitting.
You are going to get a treat because we're going to tell you the dark secrets of this town.
But first and foremost, I wish to say, because some of you may not be with us on the morrow, thank all of you very, very much for attending our good classes this year. We have thoroughly enjoyed it, and we hope to see you all again year next.
You give our lives purpose, and we thank you for that.
Thank you very much for making our first experience with a formal stage show a success.
Because we would not be here if it were not for you.
It's true. We just don't be sitting in the street talking about history.
Not that we don't do that.
Anyway.
Still.
So, a little bit about the history of Scarborough.
You may start. It is very often said, and think about this as we talk about this. It is very often said that if you were born in Scarborough, our town is very polarized. You were born on the sunny side of the street, or you were born on the dark side of the street. And you can tell, looking at anyone who's from Scarborough, pretty much at a glance, where they were born. You can change that all the time. But think about that as we talk about the cycles of law and lawlessness this town has gone through.
But let us go back even further.
Well, actually, we'll go back even further than that.
To the Romans.
We are fairly certain that the Romans had a signal station here upon the escarpment of Scarborough. Now, one of the things you will probably not know, because you see what is essentially the Olympic village of the village of Scarborough. Scarborough itself is much larger than what you see here. And it sits upon an escarpment. It has a natural deep water port, and it has the North Bay, which is very calm and very wondrous. And between the two, actually, South Bay is very calm and wondrous. The North Bay has a whirlpool within it.
And then between them, there is a small peninsula which leads up to a very steep hill, and that is where the Roman signal tower was built. Because it's 300 feet tall. You can see a signal fire for many, many miles. So that is where it's built. It would be this way, in this direction. This area.
We say it is a hill that goes up 300 feet. It goes up 300 feet, and then it's a sheer drop into the ocean.
This place where you are now is not very well populated during the rest of the year. The rest of the town is where we live. This is where the fair occurs. There is more of Scarborough beyond.
What about that way?
I grew up down by the docks down that way.
I was born in the Herald shop over in Scarborough.
And if you come and visit us at about 8 o'clock in the evening, we would gladly take you and show you our homes. Now, after the Romans, sometime in there, the town was actually given a charter by Henry II.
By the way, Henry VIII now. We have a couple of Georges in there in between.
Right. It is widely believed that Scarborough was founded by the Vikings during their time in northern England, Scotland, and Ireland. It was originally called Scarborough.
After a brutal Viking who would terrorize the town periodically.
Named Scarpi. And so that is the rumour. We don't have proof of this, but this is the common rumour that goes on last time. But Scarborough, even in our day and age, 1533, is many hundreds of years old. And
So
as
it's
is very
festival, by the way.
Aye. Think of it this way: both Scarborough Castle and the fair itself are older than your country is in the 21st century.
So, it's, as I said, Henry II charters the town, gives it permission to actually become a borough, which means it has representatives that it sends to Parliament. Two Parliament. It also is chartered to have its own sheriff, its own a town council consisting of a Lord Portal, a Lord Banks, who is a tax collector,
Chesterfield,
a Lord Chesterfield, who is responsible for the roads and bridges.
Lord Waterford, who's responsible for the harbour and the
And all
rivers,
the waterways.
bridges and whatnot.
And a variety of other different officials in the city.
And of course the fair itself, which you have to have a charter, you can't just put up a fair anywhere in England, you have to have a royal charter. We've had that since the 13th century.
Now, interestingly enough, Scarborough, having a natural port, becomes a very important part of trade. It becomes very important in trade and in fishing, which is very, very, as we've discussed, very important in England. Of course, all of this prosperity brings a certain amount of graft with it. And you begin to see very powerful families begin to develop certain controls.
There's lots of greasing of pawns going on, lots of bribery, lots of more unfortunate things I shall not mention.
We are going to fast forward to the time of the Duke of Gloucester under Edward IV. His brother, Richard, is the Duke of Gloucester. Edward, after he defeats the remainder of the Lancastrian house at the Battle of Towton, which, by the way, was only about 25 miles from here.
Late 15th century.
And it is an extremely brutal and bloody battle, fought on a Palm Sunday in a snowstorm.
In a blizzard.
They had to stop the battle twice to clear the battlefield of the dead.
All that could be seen anywhere was the white of the snow and the red of the blood.
It is thought that the number of casualties that day exceeded 20,000. That is almost half of all the people that died in the Wars of the Roses died in that one battle. It was a horrendous, horrendous event. And it shapes York, because the Yorkists are victorious. So Edward takes the throne. He needs a place for his wars with Scotland to have a northern port, and he chooses Scarborough. And he sinks a lot of money into Scarborough. Under his patron, his brother, the Duke of Gloucester, Richard, the crookback. And he puts a lot of money into the towns, and he builds the castle up better, and he puts the walls up. He actually extends the wall from the smaller inner city to the outer city.
Because Scarborough's grown past its borders, it's grown past its wall over the century. So large portions of the town are outside that, and he extends them somewhat more, so the rest of the town is more protected.
Now the Baron of Scarborough at this time, named Uthred. Yes, Baron Uthred is an interesting man. He's a very well-liked man, but he's also very mild and meek. And there are other families who begin to take advantage of this. Old families whose names still ring within Scarborough to this day.
For instance, the Sages.
And the Pettyjohns.
The Fishers.
The Fishers.
These families begin to acquire vast amounts of wealth. In fact, during this period of time, there is a rise of piracy and smuggling off the coast of Scarborough.
Oh, he's glorious.
Yes, you can get in and out of our harbour without having to wait for our harbour pilot. That is not true in most of England.
It's easier to sneak in goods without paying tariff on them.
And so Scarborough becomes known as a wretched hive of scum and villainy in this period of time.
It's a very rough town at the time.
Now Uthred is a supporter of the Yorkists. When the Earl of Richmond, Henry Tudor, decides to sail and invade Wales in 1485,
5 or 7.
He sails with a particular pilot and captain of a vessel
By the name of William Fairfield.
His father.
William Fairfield stands with Henry upon the battle of Bosworth Field, 1485.
Great.
No, you weren't looking at me, not my
Battle of Bosworth Field, in which Henry Tudor strikes down Richard III, who was once the Duke of Gloucester and is now King of England, and in one sword stroke changes the directions of England forever. And so it is that Henry VII comes to the throne. He's a very magnanimous man, not terribly charismatic, but he understands that rewarding the people who have served him is a good way to keep them loyal.
Remember, in days past, we talked about the peerage of England, all being old blood families of the nobles. Henry VII changed that and started giving deeds and titles for acts of merit.
He turns William Fairfield into a baron and sends him off to become the Baron of Scarborough. And so William Fairfield arrives in Scarborough and decides there's going to be a new order. Instead of a Richard Hyde of scum and villainy, it will remain a Richard Hyde of scum and villainy, and they will put money in his pocket. It works.
Your illegal action.
It works very well. And in fact,
We lived under martial law, but the law was law, whether you liked it or not.
interestingly enough, the village becomes extremely prosperous. Now, of course, there are a great many people, everyone's making money. And when everyone's making money, no one cares that there are certain people that are making much more money at a little bit at the expense of others.
Until it reaches the king.
And then it becomes a problem.
Families like mine refer to these days as the golden days.
Now, there are two brothers, twins, no less, that are born to William Fairfield. They are Latimer Fairfield and Mortimer Fairfield. William Fairfield dies. Since Mortimer Fairfield is the eldest by
6 seconds.
he becomes the new Baron of Scarborough, where his father was a very live and let live man. Mortimer Fairfield
Short, weaselly bastard.
was as dark a heart as you could ever possibly imagine. He decides that the biggest problem with Scarborough is there's not enough money coming into his pocket.
Even though the town is very prosperous, he is not seeing as much of it as he would like.
He becomes known as the robber baron of Scarborough. He lets thieves guilds, brigands, highwaymen, pirates, smugglers, even more so than before. As long as they're getting payment.
There are pirates operating openly from the port of Scarborough. Henry VII actually sends men to arrest him, sends someone to summon him to the Star Chamber. Of course, when the man arrives, Mortimer is at sea. No one can find him. And by the time he returns, the messenger has met with an unfortunate accident. And so it is that Henry VII tries to deal with this as best he can, but is unsuccessful. He has other problems.
Not until the days of his son, Henry VIII, that things would finally change.
Henry VIII takes the throne.
1509.
Within a few years, he decides we have a problem in Scarborough. But he really doesn't have the resources to deal with it too much. There has been a mercenary that has been serving the king and his father for a very long time. A man by the name of Jameson Rooke. The king says to Jameson Rooke, Jameson, I have one last job for you. And Jameson says, Your Majesty, I am retired. And he says, then I will make your retirement well, if you can take it. I will make you the new Baron of Scarborough, but you must tame Scarborough.
I imagine the king said, all right, if you clean it up, you can have it.
Yeah, pretty much not bad.
Something along that. Rid me of this problem and you can keep the prize.
Jameson Rooke takes his brother, Macallan Rooke, Benjamin Blood,
Michael Bruce Hall.
Michael Bruce Hall, and 20 knights under 20 men at arms under a young knight named Charles Brandon that the king does give to him to take with him.
All right, let's everybody throw out the age game of how old we were when this took place. What year are we?
1533.
No. This is 1511. So I was 9.
I was 4.
I was 20. No, 18.
I was in my 20s.
And we were all here.
We ride into town to clean it up within the day.
I know. One
Within
of
the
the
day.
scariest things in my life.
Mortimer Fairfield is dead. On the end of Baron Rooke's sword, there is blood in the streets.
Your Grace, if I may,
Oh, please tell that story. Please.
we were here in Broad Meadow it came down to McGowan, Rook, myself, Jameson, and Mortimer. I had McGowan on point. Jameson had Mortimer on point.
Standing over there.
And
Think of the devil.
I looked at Jameson Rook and I said, Jameson, I yield. And dropped my sword. At which time Jameson said, I don't. And stabbed Mortimer in the chest.
Killed him dead with a spot.
And that day, Scarborough had a new baron.
A lot of the younger people of our village think of this as a very joyous moment. These men rode in and the light of God shone upon them and they were fabulous. For those of us that were there and remember, it took a long time for me to get around to trusting the Rook.
Aye.
He rode in and destroyed everything I knew at the order of the king.
And depending on what family you're from and what side of the street you come from, there are those who remember it as the day Scarborough was saved or the day Scarborough was lost.
Because Jameson Rook brought a level of law that this town had never seen. Now, he did not overturn it completely. He understood that the status quo was important as long as everyone was making money. But that meant everyone, including the king.
So the more shadier families are allowed to continue operating Scarborough as long as we paid our fair share.
And to make sure you paid your fair share, you put one of the shady families in charge of taxes.
The Petty Johns.
Indeed. He also instituted something that is very important, that exists, the phrase, to this day. It is the difference between justice and law. Law is on the books. Laws can be broken and they can be overlooked. Justice does not necessarily require a hearing by law. And there is something called Scarborough justice. The term exists in England even until your day.
It means justice that is harsh and brutal and swift.
And absolute.
Absolute, no question.
We have a magistrate. That man right there, McAllen Rook.
Speak of the devil.
Yeah.
But he does not hear as many cases as you might think. Because we have a sheriff that believes in Scarborough justice.
He believes in the people as well. The greatest change that the Rook brought to Scarborough was a change in mood. Because he rules not only with a firm hand, but with love and with benevolence. He's a very kind man. For the first time in its history, this is a place where everyone is welcome, regardless of who you are, as long as you do not cause trouble yourself.
And that is evident when you take a look around our village. The gentlemen we trust to guard our gates with cannon, Scottish. The women that run some of the most successful businesses here are not English born, they're English made. Because they came and they swore fealty to the Rook.
And by swearing to Rook, you swear fealty to the king.
This has become a town that wherever you were born, you can make a life here for yourself and become one of us.
By the way, Egyptians are illegal in England. We hang them on sight,
Except here.
except in Scarborough. Because the Rook has opened his gates to them and made them welcome. And the king, out of respect for him, has declared this area off limits to that particular bit of law.
Now this being said, the sun shines bright here, and it is beautiful, but it shines too bright for some.
And we would not live without our shadow.
Yeah. There's still some bitterness over the old days of some people.
And there are shady sides of the street that have saved me more than once.
We look out for our own though.
Yeah,
The docks are not a good place for decent people to go, even at the best of times. We have a couple of pubs there, a couple of public houses. The Three Mariners is one of the most famous.
He is widely known as the seediest alehouse in all of England.
Proprietor is Miss Betsy Hull.
And she is the only woman that works in that public house.
Indeed.
There's a reason why all her servants, all the people working in that pub are men.
There are, for the majority, sailors out of work.
Why? Because that public house is the first place that sailors hit when they make war.
That's what we enjoy it. Me too. So, yeah.
We also have a number of other establishments some of the best beer in England is brewed at a place called the Pig and Whistle.
It's Irish owned and operated. But they have become good citizens of Scarborough and of England.
If you drink a beer in Scarborough,
Guardians of the Gates.
yes, if you drink a beer in Scarborough, more than likely it was brewed at the Pig and Whistle.
And there, of course, is the Pounding Heart House of Tarts,
My favourite.
which almost every man in all of Scarborough, and some of the women too, have been to.
They're the best food.
They have excellent food. They are in fact an inn, and they offer and they bake tarts every day,
Enjoy the tarts and then stay for the tarts.
and then stay for the tarts.
There is also the most prominent public house or tavern called Cross Keys.
Cross Keys is large.
This is your section.
It's a tavern. It's owned by my aunt, Rosemary McAnally, known as Muggsy. It is a large tavern. It strives for a very good reputation. Very shady things go on there. When I was young, when I was probably 5 or 6 years old, I first saw the tunnels that lead down to the shore with the smuggling and stuff. But I didn't tell you that. Muggsy was my age. But it keeps a reputation though as a more respectable place, and the local gentry will often be there, gossiping, talking about the business of the town and whatnot.
It is not unpopular for the mayor of Scarborough to hold town council meetings there.
Right.
It's a nice big public house.
There's a large one in Scarborough.
And we have a new one,
The Cat and
the
Fiddle.
Cat and Fiddle.
Which is actually right over there in the Gulf Road.
For those of you who have not been, it is the most excellent. It's actually a tavern.
It's another one run by a retired sailor.
And it comes from the phrase Catherine Fidelis, meaning Catherine the Faithful, referring to that woman who was never married to him.
Indeed.
By the
And-
way, you will see a great number in 1535 and onward of pubs called Cat and Fiddle. There are a lot of them.
By the way, it is a tavern.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that. Yeah.
We are discussing why it is a tavern. We have a number of the other taverns in Scarborough. I actually think many of the things we call pubs here may be in fact tavern.
Ale houses serve ale, beer, sometimes cider, and they tend to be a bit lower class. A tavern is more like a wine bar. It serves wine almost exclusively, usually owned by vintners sometimes, and it serves a higher class of clientele. So if you're a peasant, a yeoman class, you're going to be drinking in an ale house. If you're gentry or noble class, you're drinking in a tavern.
We're almost at time.
Yeah. All right, then let's go ahead and fill what time we have left with what questions you may have for us. Do you have questions about the characters here in Scarborough or any particular location?
It's later.
It's a commentary.
It is a common term, but it is considerably later. Most of the things will be actually called an ale house.
It comes from public house.
All right.
If you have any other questions, let us know after.
Actually, I do have a quick question I need to throw out. What are we talking about tomorrow?
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
We have not picked a
Ah,
topic.
We have not picked the subject. What are we talking about tomorrow?
What would you like to learn tomorrow? Don't
Anything
get
at all.
shy now. You've given me suggestions all year long.
How about the history of this fair?
Of this fair?
We
Beautiful.
can do that.
We can do that for
All right.
you. Wonderful.
That will probably take up about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we can do something, and then we can do
And then
their
we can do
questions.
the rest of this lecture. We
Alright.
can finish this one.
Indeed.
Sounds good. All right. Today's problem of the day before we go is that
I can't remember.
I've slept since
I
then.
remember it not either. You remember your grace.
Has something to do with the king. Oh! He has spent so much money on his new bride that the treasury is bankrupt.
That is the rumor of the day. Enjoy. We are away.
As always, thank
Thank you all very much.
Thanks for the lovely laugh.